Before we get into this round of tutorials, I'd like to recommend everybody quickly check the units of whatever drawing they're working in. And once more, you can do this by typing UNITS and hitting enter. So, with that, I'd like to point out that the shapefile that we're about to go through here is in millimeters for units. The plan that we'll spend some time working in later is in meters. So it's always good to check. Before we go any further, now is a good time to talk about a few more tools that will be useful to you. In the world of carpentry and architecture, chamfers are cutaway corners that make a symmetrical sloping edge. Chamfers in AutoCAD, like the one you see right here, are quite useful to be able to produce at short notice. Take this rectangle for instance. We can chamfer this corner right up here. To initiate the chamfer command, we can move up to the Home tab, find the Modify panel, look to fillet, find the drop-down menu just to the right of it, left-click, and move down to Chamfer. Alternatively, you can just type C-H-A in the command and hit Enter to initiate the Chamfer command. Next, we're going to tell the chamfer how specifically we want to approach it. We're going to hit D to initiate the distance alias of chamfer. So press D and hit enter. Now we will put in two measurements, 300 millimeters, and the second distance, 600 millimeters. Now the first line will be the first measurement you put in, so that'll be 300. The second will be the second measurement we put in, which is 600. Left click. And as you can see, that produces a pretty dramatic chamfer, but it is to the exact specifications that we just provided for it. Let's try something else. Chamfers will forge that middle angle even if the two lines to be chamfered together aren't touching. Let's try it right now. Type CHA to initiate the chamfer command, hit enter, specify distance with D and hit enter. Now this time we'll make our chamfer distances small. Call them 50, enter, and for our second, also 50. Hit enter once more. Now it doesn't really matter which line we select first. Let's just pick this one. Left click, and then pick this one. And as you can see, AutoCAD knows to complete that chamfer by extending the lines to the point where those distances can be found between them. Left click. And just like that, chamfer can be used to close two separate lines, assuming their paths will somehow intersect. So now that we've had a chance to try chamfers, let's try a different tool. Extend is a very useful tool when you have a line or a series of lines that you want to have meet another line or polyline. Let's say I want to have these two bottom lines here extend and touch this line right here. With the Extend tool, we can do this very easily. Extend can be activated by typing EXT and hitting enter. It can also be sourced manually by moving up to the Home tab, going to the Trim icon, finding the drop-down menu just to the right of it, and picking Extend from there. Once we have Extend activated, EXT, and hit enter, we're going to tell AutoCAD more specifically what we want to do. We're going to pick boundary edges because this here is the boundary that we're going to be extending our lines to. So let's select or hit B for boundary edges and hit enter. Now we're going to select all of the objects that we're dealing with in this scenario. So this line, left click this line, and left click this line. Once we're finished selecting all of our objects that are going to be involved in this extend command, we hit enter. Then we drag our cursor over the lines that we're hoping to actually extend. Just like that. As you can see, as I bring my cursor over it, it already wants to do that extend. And I just confirm that extend by hitting left click and doing the same for this line. Bring it over the line and hit left click. I can hit escape and I've completed my extend command. Now, you landscape architecture students in the class are going to find this next tool particularly useful because it's super valuable for inputting surface areas into a closed shape. The tool I'm talking about is the Hatch tool. Hatches are super valuable tools in AutoCAD that let you fill an area with a pattern. provided these lines here are forming a closed shape, you'll be able to input a hatch into that. And here's how it's done. You can either type hatch, H-A-T, to initiate the hatch command, or you can move up to the Home tab, look in the Draw panel, and you can find the hatch icon right here. You can left click, and that automatically brings you to a whole hatch tab. Now there's a couple ways you can actually create a hatch in here. The first one is if you move over here to pick points, you can left click and then pick any point inside of this closed shape, left click, and it'll automatically input a hatch pattern into it. Alternatively, you can also use the select option for creating a hatch. This is where you left click the select and then you just select the actual polyline that's defining this shape that you want to create a pattern inside of. Let's try it right now. Left click, and as you can see, it uses the closed polyline to create a hatch pattern inside. You can adjust your hatch pattern to be solid, a pattern, or a gradient if you wish. And all of these fill adjustments can be done by first selecting your hatch, moving to the pattern panel, and then using the up and down arrow, you can scroll through to pick a pattern, gradient, or solid color that you like. Let's try the herringbone for now. Left click. And now that's our new hatch pattern. If you wish, you can adjust the scale and size of the hatch pattern by moving over to the scale area of the properties panel and adjusting this number. Currently it's at 1. Let's bring it up to 15. Hit enter. Cool. As you can see, that makes the scale now 15 times larger than it was before. Let's bring it back to 5. Hit enter once more. So as you can see, you can change the scale of your hatch as freely as you want to. You can also change the angle. Currently, it's set at the default angle of 0. Now, if I were to change the angle to 45 degrees for the hatch, it will rotate the hatch 45 degrees accordingly. Let's try it right now. Type 45 in the angle panel, hit enter, and just like that, it's rotated our hatch 45 degrees. We can also adjust the transparency of the hatch if we want it to be a little duller or a little bit pulled back. It really just depends on how you want your hatch to be graphically represented. But if we set this transparency of hatch to 50, as you can see, it's just going to read a little softer and more transparent than it did before. If you wish, you can also adjust the color of your hatch by moving over to the hatch color portion of the properties panel. Moving over to the drop-down menu, instead of having it colored based on layer, you can move around and you can select any color that you want your hatch to be. Now is a good time for us to switch gears for a moment and talk about a handy labeling tool. That is the text command. Including text in your drawings can be a very effective way of labeling them. So I'll show you how to quickly add text to your drawing in AutoCAD. You begin by moving up, tab, moving over to the annotation panel, going to the text icon, and moving to the drop-down menu. Left click. For the moment, we're going to select single line text. Let's left click, and now it's going to ask us to specify a point. What we're going to try doing is we're going to try labeling this as a parking lot. Let's give it a try. To begin our text line, we're going to left click, and now it's going to ask us which direction we want to move in. Now for something like this, you can specify any line of text you want to start typing on. This is where it might not be a bad idea to move down to your status bar and select ortho mode so that you're producing a nice 90-degree line. Okay, so we're happy with this direction for our single line of text. Let's left click, specify rotation angle of text. We don't want to rotate it, so we can just click once more. And now we can begin typing. Type whatever you want to label this parking lot as. Click outside of the text to complete your single line of text. Now, I know what you're all thinking. That's huge, that's way too big. Well, we're going to fix that using one of the most valuable and essential tools in AutoCAD, the Properties palette. You can make the Properties palette active by typing PRO for properties and hitting enter. And just like that, the properties panel will appear. The properties palette will display a list of all the important property settings relating to the shape, text, or generally feature that you're currently working in. In this case, watch what happens now that we have the property panel. Watch what happens when we select this bit of text that we just produced. We'll select the text, and as you can see, all these different statistics about that piece of text appear in the properties panel. One of them is the height of the text. Now, this text is way too big and tall. So let's watch what happens if we change this from 14.78 to 5. Hit 5 and hit enter, and that automatically sizes it down. Let's bring it down a little further. Some element of guess and check might be used when it comes to adjusting text size. 2. Now that's much better. If we want to move that text, we can select it once more. Type M for move, just like we discussed in the last video, and move it over some, just so it's a little better centered. This is where the properties palette is particularly useful for you to have, and certainly never hurts to have on your AutoCAD screen at all times. So just once more, I'll get rid of that for once, and for the sake of showing you one more time how you bring about the properties palette, you simply type PRO for properties, hit enter, and it will appear. And it will provide the properties information about any line or piece of text or anything else you might select. Now there's a final quick tool for your tool bag in AutoCAD that will be handy when you're doing quick on-the-fly measuring of things that might be useful to collect measurements for. That is the distance command. Distance, or DIST, will allow us to pick 2 points, and it will produce an exact measurement of the distance between those 2 points. Let's escape. Let's try it once. DIST. We'll hit enter, and now we can measure the distance. Let's find the distance of the depth of this parking lot right here. First, we'll select this corner here, left click, and as you can see, it's already measuring that distance for us. And once again, this is where it's really good to have your snaps on, because now we can pick this other endpoint. And then if we pick it, we will left click once more. And as we can see down here, the length of that line in delta y is 18.1. So 18.1 meters.